You are now tuned in to the newest Bills Mafia production, Fambase Sports. Join Jarek Hall and Kari Demos as they take you around the world of sports. Every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. Only on the official network of the original Bills Mafia.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to Buffalo Fambase Sports. We are back here again with another episode, and we got a lot to talk about today, guys. We got Deebo Samuel about the aftermath of that massive contract and kind of the backlash he's been getting. Bill Russell's. We're going to talk, pay a tribute to him and just talk about the impact he had over basketball, especially for the Black community. Just being one of the kind of one of the, not going to say one of the founding fathers because he wasn't the first one, but obviously he's had a lasting impact on the game and on the court and off the court for a lot of those years. So we'll definitely talk about Bill Russell there. Again, we're going to talk a little bit more about training camp chatter, and of course the Dolphins. The Dolphins and Deshaun Watson about kind of the drama that's been going on with them. Of course, the Dolphins were suspended. Not suspended, but obviously they were taking away the 2023 first-round pick and their third-round picks, along with their their vice president, ownership. A lot of Dolphins drama. Deshaun Watson 6-game suspension drama. We're going to talk about all of that. But, man, before we get started, man, I want to welcome my co-host, Kari Demos, man. Welcome back here. Another great time, another great episode. And, man, how's everything going so far?
Things are all right, just getting moved over here actually in Rochester, so things are going all right. Can't complain, getting settled. So it's a lot going on, though. Definitely a lot going on in the sports world. So
Absolutely, man. But we're just gonna hop straight into it, and we're gonna talk about Deebo Samuel first because this is just one that I had to argue. I ain't gonna lie to you. I had to argue with a lot of people over. So Deebo Samuel got paid a pretty big contract. Got a 3-year, I think around a $72 million contract. I think somewhere around that ballpark. But for the most part, the biggest win for him was that he got the $58 million guaranteed money. So that's really great for Deebo. But a lot of fans out there that are pretty much saying that maybe he doesn't deserve this contract. He's a running back, and they brought up a lot of his rushing stats. But I don't know. I think there's just a lot of absurd takes about that. I think Deebo Samuel, is one of the most valuable players in all of football. I mean, the man had over 18. I mean, he almost had over 2,000 all-purpose yards. I mean, look at what he's done in the rushing department, the receiving department. He was top 5 in the National Football League. Had over at least 11 total touchdowns. I mean, Deebo Samuel has been incredibly valuable for the 49ers over the last really 2 to 3 years now. So I don't know where all the backlash is coming from, but just kind of give me your thoughts about Deebo Samuel. I mean, just, about his contract, just some of the sort of backlash he's been receiving lately.
yeah, it's really I just don't understand it. I mean, the guy's one of the best players in the league. He was an All-Pro last year, first team. One of the best, dual threat options we've seen in a long time. So I don't know. I just don't get why people are, hating on these guys getting their money, especially just seeing the receiver market the way it blew up this year. He fits right into that line with Diggs and Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, all these guys, AJ Brown, all these guys that got new deals. Terry McLaurin as well. So I don't know. I mean, especially just knowing how impactful he's been, helping them get the 2 NFC title games the last 3 years. Guy when he's healthy, he's one of the best players in the league. So it just doesn't make sense why people want to hate, but again, he's got his money, 58 guaranteed. And I think one thing that's cool about the deal is the rushing incentives that he's got in it. So it'll be interesting to see how they use him in that regard. But regardless, I think it's a good fit for him as well. They have such a unique style of play and unique offense. So I think they're going to just be able to continue using him the way that they have, and just having him flourish. Again, he's one of the best in the game. The position doesn't even need to be labeled on him. He called himself a wide back in his interview today. So, the guy really he just does it all. He brings different type of mentality to the team and to the field. So, it'll be interesting to see. Especially because this deal runs through, I believe, until he turns 29. So, he'll be able to cash in possibly once again. As this deal is expiring, but we'll see. We'll definitely see. But good for him, and good for the Niners to be able to get it done because there was a lot of noise going on about this deal.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. It just like Deebo Samuel, of course, I mentioned a little bit earlier. I mean, he's one of the most valuable players, I think, in all of football. I mean, you're talking about a Percy Harvin, Cordell Patterson type of player that really, in a way, I think he popularized the position because his role was always kind of popular throughout the college ranks. I mean, again, Percy Harvin, Cordell Patterson were just, notable players that were just famous. Laviska Shenault was kind of a recent player that was a do-it-all. Denard Robinson from Michigan was kind of in that role a little bit there. We can go on. I mean, so many players in college, but of course in the National Football League, it's hard to be in the sort of role that he was in and just flourish. I mean, Brad Smith was pretty good in that role with the Jets. Um, but it's just, Dexter McCluster was like, he was that for the Kansas City Chiefs. But there's just not a lot of players. There's not a lot of players that can really handle that role and do it at such a very, very high level. And I think for the most part, Deebo Samuel, I think, is one of the first players, if not the first player, to do it at an elite level. I mean, Cordell Patterson had a really good season with the Falcons, but nowhere near the type of caliber and level that Deebo Samuel was able to handle. So, I mean, honestly, you can make an argument he was a little underpaid here. I mean, yes, he's getting a pretty big fat contract, but you can make an argument he should be the highest paid receiver in the National Football League just based off his production. But at the same time, I think 3 years is reasonable for him. Only because I think for Deebo Samuel, it's just because of his role. If they're going to have him do the same things, right? Is his body going to be susceptible for taking the amount of hits, taking the amount of damage that he's going to be for maybe a 5 or 6 year career? I'm just not too sure of it. So we're gonna see what Kyle Shanahan is going to be doing. Obviously, Trey Lance is the starting quarterback now for the 49ers, and they got a lot of weapons. George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk is going to be there. The offensive line is still going to be great. So we'll see what happens with Deebo, man. But I'm just overall happy to see him finally get the money he deserves.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something you mentioned is like, that guys, those type of guys are so big now, like the weapon type guys. Like, I've always been, my favorite running back is Alvin Kamara because, he's a dual threat guy. He doesn't get a ton of carries each year, but he gets so many catches as well, that those touches, they add up. It doesn't really matter his rushing total. You got to look at his yards from scrimmage. And same with Deebo, like, same thing. He's a guy that, just get him the ball in space and let him work. A lot of guys, I think like that now are really, some of the best in the league, whether it's Tyreek Hill, obviously when he's healthy, Christian McCaffrey, even like, Saquon Barkley, being able to be as dynamic as he can be when healthy as well. But again, I think the thing is too, when you look at guys that are, receivers first, that are taking on more of these responsibilities, guys like Curtis Samuel, and I think those guys, those guys are the ones that are going to last a little bit longer because, they're not taking the pounding that you would in between the tackles, getting 15 plus carries a game, whatever the case is. So, I don't know. I really think that, for Debo, he definitely, took a pay cut with it. He got his money definitely, but, cut some of the salary down a little bit. And I think part of that is probably just considering, he's got one of the best teams around him in the league. So, a lot of other guys got to, make money on that team. So, I know Nick Bosa's contract is coming up as well. So the Niners are going to have to take care of some people. But, I think the biggest thing is he got his money, and he's a guy, again, that, you're going to just continue to see these types of players, these hybrids, these dual threat guys, because that's the way football's moving now. It's not just, oh, he's the X receiver, he's the Z, he's the Y, So I think it's going to be beneficial for him, and again, just other guys that are going to follow his path as well.
Absolutely, man, absolutely. But before we go on to our next topic, just want to kind of make a huge shout out to Bill Russell. That's the next guy we're going to talk about. Bill Russell passed away, unfortunately. A little kind of earlier, throughout. But you're talking about one of the legends of basketball, one of the greatest basketball players of all time, arguably top 10, if not. Some people may say he's the greatest basketball player of all time, but there's no question, kind of the influence that he's had over the game. Just from not just from a basketball standpoint, but just in African, throughout the Black community, the African American history, and just kind of the impact he kind of laid out for it. So Bill Russell, for those who don't know, is an 11-time champion with the Boston Celtics. Holds the record for most rings of all time, and I don't think that's unbreakable. I don't think anyone's gonna break that record. But was the heart and soul of that Boston Celtics team throughout those years, and he played against a lot of great players. I know some people say that's the Plumbers League, but I mean, you look at guys like Will Chamberlain. You look at so just a lot of those guys out there. Bill Russell was definitely a part of it. So Kyrie, man, just kind of give me your thoughts about Bill Russell and just kind of his impact, just on the game, on and off the court.
Yeah, I mean, he's just the ultimate winner, and like to think, obviously he won 11 chips, but in 21 deciding games, and I honestly think if you count um, his last 2 years of high school, it's like 23-0 in this regard. 23-0 in deciding games, essentially. So, I mean, whether it's game seven or, his team was up 3-2, whatever the case is, his team always won. Granted, he did have a lot of talent around him, but he elevated those guys. So, I think that's one thing. Even just, um, with him as a coach, he was elected into the Hall of Fame as a player and as a coach. Like that is, you rarely see that. So I think that's one thing. But just knowing what he stood for off the court, knowing that socially he always wanted to bring awareness to not only the black community but just social justice and civil rights issues. I mean, people really forget. He grew up or he played in an era when being a prominent black, not just sports figure but just American figure was a big deal, and not the easiest road to go down. So I think that and just the historical things that he was a part of. I mean, I mentioned he was a Hall of Fame coach. He was the first black coach in any North American sports league. Like, that's unbelievable, to think guys like, you know, Monty Williams or to think guys like Mike Tomlin now, just not even just in the sport of basketball, thinking outside of it. Like, he
Mm-hmm.
really pioneered things for so many. Even too, just thinking about what he did with he was also part of the first all-black starting lineup in college basketball history. Like there are just so many things. I remember getting the notification and just thinking like, obviously this is a huge loss for the sports community, but like this is truly like one of the most impactful people in American history, let alone world history. So, um, you know, salute and RIP to Mr. Russell, and hope his family is doing the best they can in a tough time like this, because it's never easy to see someone go, even as many years as he was blessed to see. So it's unfortunate, but again, just what an impactful person, an influential person who really just, I mean, I just don't think in terms of impact and reach and um, just in terms of if they truly the intangible, the off the court, the things you really can't see. I don't know if there's can't name five more people in the sports industry historically that have meant more to it than Bill Russell. I mean, he just has just attributed so much to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you take a look at some of the legends, especially over the time. I mean, it's like outside of like American sports. I mean, I can think of Maradona when he passed away when he was in Argentina, and just I mean he won that country the World Cup, but what he meant for them just on and off the pitch. I mean, he was a legend. I mean, when he died, and it was because of obviously it involved a lot of things we're just not going to say, but obviously when he passed away, I mean that entire country mourned him. I mean it felt like the entire country just went to his funeral. And I think about Pele, as not just as a Brazilian legend. A lot of people know him as arguably right now the greatest football player of all time, but what he meant as a black person. I mean a black person in sports in Brazil. And as far as kind of just black history overall, I mean he was a pioneer. He was a pioneer for a lot of black people to not only to really get involved that much into the game. And obviously there was a lot more players that came right after. But I mean you're talking about those Brazil teams back in the 50s and 60s, which were those Brazilian teams had a lot of black players, which a lot of people, including the entire world, the U.S. even looked after. So I think of Bill Russell, and I think he's definitely in that category as far as just what he means. It's not just the game of basketball, just the entirety of sports. Because just the overall impact. I mean, we were going through a time, and it wasn't just the U.S. There were other countries around the world that were going through, they were going through all these type of issues involving race. So, and Bill Russell was a part of it, right in the apex of it, and that was a guy that in a way thrived, and became extremely successful in that era. So, obviously, a lot of people think of Muhammad Ali as just as a pioneer, and rightfully so. But Bill Russell arguably is in that discussion. He's in that discussion, and it just kind of reminds me, man, that we're losing a lot of these legends. A lot of these guys that were around this time are just getting are these guys are getting away. So,
Mm-hmm.
Pele is also kind of one of my influential athletes that I kind of look up to, and I'm like, well, damn. I mean, you hate to say it, but if when he goes, I mean, it's going to be a sad day for the entire world once he goes. So, the entire world is mourning Bill Russell. Obviously, this, especially the Celtics community, um, huge community overall wise. I might not like the city of Boston, man, but I definitely can respect the sports world. And Bill Russell was definitely a big part of that organization, and just not just to the city of Boston, but just overall as to sports what he meant. So, just our rest in peace, Bill Russell.
Before we move on, yeah, I wanted to say, talking about that, the city of Boston, that this should just show you, what he was trying to accomplish, what he really stood on, because he was, as revered as he was around the country. I mean, in his own city of Boston, he dealt with so much racism, and obviously there's, been the historical ties to that. That we could go on for days on end with that. So, it was sad to see that, and it was sad to know that he spent years and years away from Boston, a city that he was so synonymous with. So it's unfortunate, but again, I think that just goes to show why he did the things that he did. He saw things that you know thankfully that you and I and other people of color and other marginalized communities will not have to see or won't have to deal with on as consistent of a basis, just because some of the things he was able to do. So again, as big as his impact was on the court, off the court, you could say it was that much bigger.
Absolutely, man, absolutely. But moving on now, we're going to talk about the Deshaun Watson case, and it seems like we've been talking about this for a while now. But we're back here again talking about Deshaun Watson, and this time it is official. He is suspended, but not for a majority of the season or even the entirety of the season or infinite suspension. It's 6 games. That's something that we kind of talked about. And man, all I can think about was Calvin Ridley suspended the entire year for betting on his team. I think of Josh Gordon suspended 72 games because of weed. Central Henderson, former Bills player, suspended the entire year for treating his illness when he was smoking weed. Medically cleared, but it is what it is. Just the inconsistencies. I mean, the Alvin Kamara situation. You look at Ray Rice being literally suspended for the entirety of the year. I mean, it's just so
Hmm.
many sexual assault allegations and weed and drug abuse and just so many different policies. And we've just seen nothing but inconsistencies. And it just seems like this is just one of those cases where the NFL has once again showed that they have just been extremely inconsistent as far as really protecting their name and their name and image, which they say is the most important part of their conduct. So, just kind of what do you, I mean? I know what you're gonna say, but still, I want to hear it anyway because a lot more people they don't know. So, just kind of give me your thoughts about Deshaun Watson, the 6 game suspension, just kind of how the NFL really handle it.
Yeah, just like you said, the one word that just stands out is inconsistencies. Like, just every time any situation like this comes about, I just don't understand. And yeah, you know, like you mentioned, and like the comment we just saw there.
Yep.
The fact that weed has been this, thing that the NFL has tried to uh, really just hold players back with. Obviously, leagues all throughout sports, not just NFL, are like amending those things now, thankfully. But to think that, I mean, 66 women over 17 months, and settling 23 of the 24 cases against him, and just everything, every turn in this story just gets worse. I do think one thing that I need to clarify though with people is that this was ruled by the disciplinary officer, Sue Robinson. So she came down with this, and the NFL now has 2 more days now, because this is yesterday's news, but 2 more days now to appeal. So I think with the appeal process, I guess we'll see what the NFL's going to be pushing for. We saw reports that they were pushing for anything from 12 games to a full year with a heavy fine. That's obviously not what Sue Robinson felt was necessary. And I think the tough thing is, because on one hand, of course, obviously what Deshaun's being accused of, I mean the amount of women, I mean just the details that were in the New York Post article, all these things, right? But then on the other hand, it's like, okay, there's obviously no criminal charge, and granted, the criminal investigation went on during in the midst of the civil suits. That's one thing, but just knowing that these owners in the NFL hadn't, up until today, and we'll get to that later, but hadn't really been held accountable for many things. Um, and even in saying that, talking about the situation with the Dolphins, I know I'm skipping ahead, but that situation, thinking about what they did there, um, being punished with, the tampering and everything like that. So Dolphins are being pinned for that, but they're not being pinned for anything that Brian Flores accused them of, and he, released a statement on that. Again, we'll talk about that later, but again, it's just, I don't know. I think, again, the biggest thing is the inconsistencies with the league. The league just continues to stumble over itself when it comes to these disciplinary things. Whether it's the Ray Rice situation, whether it's the Tyreek Hill situation, whether it's Reuben Foster, Josh Gordon, as you mentioned. I mean, even Tom Brady. Like the fact that Tom Brady. So you're telling me Tom Brady deflating footballs, or working with someone that deflated footballs, whatever the case is, in the 2014 season's AFC title game, is two-thirds equivalent of Deshaun Watson being accused by 23, 24 different women of sexual misconduct. Like, it just doesn't make sense. So, again, I don't know. I just, what are your thoughts? Um, just as again, this is very much this is, again, I say it every week. This has become a saga. We're almost 2 full years into this thing, and it's unfortunate because I think just so many good things happened this offseason. So many, we're coming off such an exciting 2021 season. Great offseason, all these moves, all these trades, big signings. Young guys coming in, taking on new roles now, and then we still have this dark cloud just hanging over the league. Um, Again, it's just very unfortunate. Hate to see it. All the way around, because there was never going to be. I just don't think either too. Like, I don't think there was ever going to be a good decision either way, because on one hand, I would have loved to have seen 10 plus games a year worth suspension, but then there's going to be the crowd of people that say, hey, why aren't the owners being held accountable? And I agree, because they do need to be held more accountable. But then you get the 6 game suspension, and all the other suspensions that have either equaled or surpassed this one. I don't know. Just, again, NFL. Now it's really on them. It's on them to really, to test the waters on what the suspension should be. But I guess we'll see. There's still a couple of days until they have to appeal. So I guess we'll see what their decision is.
Absolutely, man. But absolutely, before I get into that, again, he's poking fun at me. He's poking fun at me with the Georgia comment. We're gonna have to have a discussion about that, man. They're not winning a national title, but we'll talk about that in a different time. Um, but also, kind of reading Anthony Price's comment here, they say it's funny, how how you suspend him in 6 games, but he can kind of practice, after week 3, and he can, only missing around 333K. So I don't know. It's like when you look at just the entirety of the situation. I think if the NFL does appeal, and I think that they will appeal, because I think that they do in a way kind of want to protect their name, image, and likeness for themselves. I think that the goal might be to suspend him for about a year, potentially even maybe give him an infinite suspension, especially because I do believe that the NFL is still in a way investigating this matter. I believe.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
they are. They are.
yeah. So I
They
mean,
are.
there's
Well, I believe, to be honest, I think the investigation now is closed. But the interesting thing is, with there being one civil suit left, this isn't over. So
yep.
yeah,
Yeah. So
but yeah, it's crazy.
yeah, I mean, you still got. I mean, there's still so much. I mean, and we talked about this like weeks prior, but um, for the most part, I mean, there could be even more civil suits that can come out of nowhere. I mean, this is not. I mean, this was rumored to not even be the end of it. So,
Hmm.
um, just as far as like Deshaun Watson goes as a whole, man. I mean, like I said, he still is practicing. For the most part, he's participating with the team, but obviously, like once this goes full effect, he can't really practice until week 3, and then he is. It's just I don't know. It's ridiculous in my opinion that the saga is still continuing, and for the most part, the Browns signed him to a massive contract. I think they're banking more on his future compared to this season. Hence, why I think they let go of Baker Mayfield and Jacoby Brissett. Now he might be the starting quarterback for those games. The
Hmm.
fact that Deshaun Watson's actually taking first team reps instead of actually having Jacoby Brissett being that guy, I think is kind of ridiculous too in that matter. But just I mean, it's interesting, because a lot of, and again, not to take it that much political, but a lot of women have come down on the NFL and saying, well, why have they suspended them 6 games? But like you said before, I mean, the head of the disciplinary action is a woman herself. She's the person that actually gave the ruling. So,
Right.
so it's interesting how talking about their investigation. I am curious to see what they kind of thought, what they found, and just some of the evidence that that went their way, or maybe went against Deshaun Watson, and that maybe they kind of proved it, and that's why they came down with the ruling. But um, it's a very interesting situation because we've seen the Kamara Hunt situation, we've seen the Tyreek Hill situation, just all these other different situations where you had the disciplinary committee make their rulings, the NFL made their appeals, and the NFL. And then when all became official with the NFL and all that, I mean, that's when we saw different stuff happen. And
Hmm.
so again, I think that this does go back to just inconsistency, and I think that there's just in a way a lack of maybe teamwork, maybe a lack of communication from different levels of dealing with the situation, dealing with this matter. Um,
Hmm.
but I just think that it was more of a shock from the discipline the discipline aspect of suspending him 6 games, because I just really thought that they would in a way try and go ahead and protect not just the NFL's image, but you're talking about the game of football, the integrity of the game.
Right.
Again, we're going to talk about integrity in a minute, but I mean, for the most part, I mean, you look at 27 civil suits and even more counting of women that are just continuing to fall forward, and I would just expect, even though it wasn't any criminal charges filed, I just kind of would expect them to say at the same time, we got to protect our image, we got to protect our brand, we got to make a statement of saying that this sort of issues really can't happen. And so, yes, 6 games is the ruling for now, but it's kind of just an odd situation.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I mean, again, I don't necessarily fault the women for this, but I do wish that they had gone about this with the criminal intent because, I mean, maybe we see the um, see them find something. I don't know. I just maybe things just go about are gone about differently, if that's the case. But I think with the civil side of things, it's a little different because again, a criminal investigation was sprouted because of it, but even still, it just I don't know. I just everything about this situation has felt off. Um, and the saddest part is like as off as it's felt, as unprecedented as it was, the Browns bet on themselves, and it looks like they're going to win. Unfortunately, I don't think anybody wanted to see anything less than a year's worth of suspension. And I mean, if it gets up to 10 games, I think that would be something that the NFL could still push for and is probably still seeking. But at that point, again, 10 games, yes, that's a significant suspension, but that's still 7 weeks of pay that Watson will be able to get. Who knows if the Browns are 5-5 at that point? Who's to say that they don't win? 4 or 5 of their next games. Get to 9, 10 wins and sneak in the back end of the playoffs. So and then at that point he's back right where he wanted to be. So I don't know. It's one of those situations where it feels like everybody involved did wrong outside of the victims. But also too, it just doesn't necessarily feel like whole either because even though yes he's getting suspended, even though yeah he it might get lengthened the suspension. At the end of the day, what the suspension is going to be is not anywhere close to what some assumed it'd be, or projected it or forecasted it to be. I mean, just think about Trevor Bauer, his situation in MLB. I know it's a different sport, but to think he got a 2 full season suspension for what he did. And excuse me, obviously Watson's a huge NFL name. Bauer's a Cy Young winning pitcher. Like he's a huge name in baseball too. So like the fact that the MLB was willing to come down as hard as they did on him, again, to clarify to people, this is not the NFL's decision. This is the disciplinary officer's decision, who works in accordance with the NFL and the NFLPA. So that must be taken into context. But I think at the end of the day, people are going to be watching to see what the NFL does.
Yeah.
And yes, we will be talking about this next week because we'll be able to, I don't want to say finalize it, but we'll be a step closer to putting an end on it for, at least for in terms of the start of the season, because we'll know how long the suspension is. We'll know if there's a fine that comes with it, and then, from there we'll just be looking out to see what happens with the other civil suit that's or civil suits that are floating out there.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely, man. But kind of just moving on to the next topic, because we wanted, because I talked about integrity early, but a team did mess up the integrity of the game violations, and that was the Miami Dolphins. As kind of the ruling kind of came out today was, for the most part, was that you look at owners, Dolphins owner Stephen Ross, he's suspended out throughout until October 17th. He's also fined 1.6 million. Also, Vice President Bruce Beal is suspended for the entirety of the 2022 season. So you want to talk about consistency? There it is, right there. But he's suspended throughout 2022. He's also fined $500,000, and he cannot do anything to do with anything. He can't step throughout facilities. He can't no communication with the Dolphins. I mean, he's sitting at home pretty much, basically. So, but then pretty much this all came because of the impermissible violations, which the Dolphins, which of course the Dolphins violated, with Sean Payton trying to get him to become the head coach. They talked to his agent Don Yee about that, and then also Tom Brady. I mean, now this is the Tom Brady thing that's been rumored for at least for months now. That's a big reason, honestly, why I think a lot of people said that he came back was because he was offered a partnership role, an executive role, even for the Dolphins, and once that couldn't go through, he decided to play for the Buccaneers. That was the rumor that was going on that he came back for. The other rumor was that because Tom Brady was sick and tired of his kids, but again, it is what it is. I can believe both. But Kyrie, man, just kind of give your thoughts about the entire Dolphin situation, just how the NFL handled that.
Well, the crazy thing is, like, you just talked about some of the rumors floating around about it. Another one I've heard is that that it was basically locked in until the Brian Flores case came about as well. So like, it kind of really just blew back in their face. Um, Obviously, Tom Brady didn't want to be associated with something like that, um, especially with Flo. Him and Flo go back, to New England together, so they have ties. He knows him, so I do think that had something to do with it. But just to think that this is like something that actually happened is craziness because, on one hand, like, obviously a coach like Sean Payton, um, Hall of Fame coach, I believe, and for him to take step away from the Dolphins and potentially be available, yeah, like I get it. Go after him if you can. You know, maybe hold your horses a little bit, but yeah, go after him if you can. Especially a guy who in this league is well respected, and I think obviously up until he just stepped away, was considered, if not the best, one of the top two, three best offensive minds in the league. So it makes sense why you would want to go after a guy like that, but I think the Brady aspect of is really insane to me because first of all, you got a guy who's literally an active player, like, and even if he had like obviously he retired, even if he had came back, he would have had to come back just to get traded. You know what I mean? He would have had to do what um, had to have done what Gronk did with the Pats, where he forced his way out of New England, got to Tampa so he could play with Tom again. Like, you know, do we really think, and again, I know this is more like thinking at it from a business perspective, but do we really think the Bucks, who literally just won their second title, you know, obviously having Brady and everything, do you think they would want to trade him to one of their in-state, not rivals, but one of their in-state teams as well. I just don't see that happening. Like there just would have been so many implications around it. And again, another piece of it that I didn't realize was for them to even attempt to do this was so illegal because there's literally clauses that say like if you're a player you can't be tied to the executive staff of the front office and vice versa. Like if you're a part of the front office you can't be playing on the field. So it's just crazy to even think they try to pull this off. But again, that just goes to show. I talked a little bit about this last week with you with Jamarcus Russell with the Raiders, right? We wonder why some guys go to certain teams and they just don't. It just doesn't work out. Like, oh, so and so's a bust. I just really think you got to look at these organizations a little bit more. Like, are they really putting these people in good enough spots to succeed? You know. And so, an organization like the Dolphins, they've had their struggles over the years. Obviously, you know, this is something that a losing organization does. Just as the like who goes about their business this way. Even if again, even if Tom Brady was interested in playing for the Dolphins, they were reaching out to him and trying to talk to him when he was still in New England. So again, this is just all the fact that they tried to go about this way is ridiculous. And again, the NFL said this is unprecedented levels of tampering that they found. So God don't like ugly, as they say. So it is what it is. Shame on them, but again, good for the NFL in terms of making this decision for being able to set a precedent. But again, going back to the Brian Flores side of it, it's just a shame that this is what Stephen Ross is finally being held accountable for, because it reminds me of the situation with the Washington Commanders now, where Daniel Snyder had all these allegations against him, sexual harassment, just creating a volatile culture, right? The fact that they said the one thing that seems to be what will get the owners to get him out of the league is the fact that he wasn't paying, the visitors fee. Like, it's again, just the NFL, I think at times just looks and sounds so tone deaf when it comes to moves like these. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they were able to blanket the situation a little bit because again they heavily punished the Dolphins. I mean, I've never heard of a personnel or an executive literally being suspended the entire season and an owner not being able to even be around his own team until we're almost at Halloween. Like that's crazy. But again, that's they did actions that deserve that punishment. But again, it's just sad that this is the only thing they're being punished for. Because the NFL could have added in like, hey, I know this is a part of our investigation against or this lawsuit against us, and we did our own investigation in terms of that. They could have gone about it that way, but I think at times the pride of the league just shows, and they wanted to stand on, hey, this was ours, or this is what we found, and not, oh, this is what we found due to the lawsuit and investigation that followed. So
Yeah, and it's just it's interesting because we like you talk about ownership. I mean,
hmm
that's pretty much what's been going on. We've seen teams get punished. We've seen vice presidents, general managers, anything dealing with the front offices, and we've just seen them get harsher, like way harsher punishments than the actual owners. I mean, you take
hmm
you talked about with Snyder. You talked about obviously, with Stephen Ross, Jerry Jones even had some sexual allegations going against him, and I don't think really that much even happened to him that much. And then, you look at obviously, you look at the Patriots owner. I mean, it's just, that was what the whole. I mean, that was just dismissed entirely. So I mean,
yeah,
it's just it seems like for some ownership, and maybe because they're just bringing a lot of money, a lot of revenue, and I don't know. Maybe they just have way too much power. I don't know what it is, but it seems like they're getting less harsher punishments compared to the actual people that are getting. I mean, that are in the front office. I mean, the fact that, and again, maybe the vice president had maybe he was just that much involved. Maybe Beal was just that much involved compared to what we've seen from Stephen Ross. But at the end of the day, this is Stephen Ross. I mean, this is his organization. This is his. I mean, he is the owner. He's the ownership, and I feel like he should take full accountability, including for punishment, compared to everybody else. But I mean, I think the fact that Bruce Bill is suspended for pretty much half the season, while not Bruce Bill. Stephen Ross suspended for half the season, while Bruce Bill is suspended for the entirety of the season, where he can have access to doing anything. I think is I don't really have that much of a problem with the Bruce Bill suspension. I just have that much of a problem with Stephen Ross suspension, where it just seems like one person is just not really held that much accountable compared to the other person.
I don't know. I would agree with that. But the one thing that I did see is that he won't be able to take part in any of the league meetings until next season. And he also, I believe, um, I don't know if it's the owners meeting next year, but there's a few different like
Yeah, it's
his
like yeah,
say is being revoked and a few
mm-hmm.
different things. So I do think like because I thought the same thing initially. I was like, man, I mean, he's coming back in October, like while this other guy is, being able to, he has to sit down the entire season. Like, obviously, like it just looks terrible. But when you really look at it, I mean, they really stripped a lot of his power away.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that on that side of it they got it right. But yeah, I do agree in terms of I was scratching my head a little bit about how does he not get the whole season? But again, the fine that he got, taking away some of his power, I think it makes up for it. But
Yeah,
again,
and
actually, I'm sorry to cut you off.
no, you're fine, you're
Just
fine.
one other thing too is I think this is this could be something that we see moving forward. Um, and I think that with some of these owners, the problem too is that you know they with it being a heavy older white male dominated group and collective. I think at times um, the NFL has had issues with disciplining them, and it look not with obviously with not disciplining them, but then also disciplining your players who are also 70% of color. Um, so I think that's another part of it too. So to actually see this, I do think is a step in the right direction, but we just got to see them keep that same energy.
Yeah, and obviously, again, there's still a lot more breaking stuff that that's being reported about the Miami Dolphins, but definitely they took a hit because those 2023 those 2023 first round pick, the 2024 conditional, that's going to be tough. So obviously there's a lot more stuff that we're going to have to kind of figure out when it comes to that particular situation, but it's just I mean, it's the NFL did bring down the pain. They brought the pain down to the Dolphins, and it's just interesting how they just kind of handled the situation. And again, at the time, I mean, again, the Tom Brady rumor that's been going on for months, and if that was true, then were some of the other rumors about the Dolphins, and were some of those allegations true? I mean, and is the NFL are they in a way still kind of investigating those rumors? Because if they were going to find this, well, what other sort of information? Because this is not the first time that Stephen Ross has been in the headlines. I mean, he is known for for some things, of course, that obviously the NFL you can a lot of people can kind of look up themselves. So it's going to be interesting to just kind of find out just some of the other information and some of the other rumors that could potentially be true.
Yeah, it really is. And obviously the biggest thing is like, what if? What if Brady and Sean Payton had have actually got together in Miami and whatever that looked like in terms of how whether it was Brady just being a player, um, you know, whether he was there as an executive. Um, I'm sure he would have wanted to continue playing, but it's a very very huge what if because obviously the like I mentioned the one part of it that wouldn't have worked is him trying to be, an executive on top of being a player. He would have had to pick one or the other. But even still, him being there with Sean Payton instead of Mike McDaniel, where does Tua go? Is he back in Tampa now? Like, there's just so many different branches from this tree that come to mind. But again, it's just silly that the Dolphins went about their business that way. And again, they got caught with their hands in the cookie jar. It is what it is.
Absolutely, man, absolutely. But I think for the most part, just looking at these topics, I think we pretty much covered everything. I think this is actually the quickest I think we've ever covered everything. So this is actually kind of it. I mean, this is brand new for us. So That's actually kind of crazy. But just looking at the comments, Craig, I just want to shout out to everyone that's that of course that came out here supported. I am he talked a lot of his stuff about the Georgia Bulldogs smacking my tide. So that's going to be interesting to see what will happen. But Moody's also in the chat too. Shout out to Moody. He's been a long time watcher. One of my boys right there. So. Shout out to him for being in the chat, and the Bill was, he was here a little bit earlier. Shout out to him as well, and just a lot of you guys that have come from the Gen Sports channel or come from the Buffalo fan base on Twitter and Facebook, and just showed up here on YouTube, or if you're watching it from those other podcasts, we definitely kind of appreciate you, man. But man, Kyrie, man, is there anything else you want to kind of discuss? Anything you want to talk about that we haven't really gone over?
Just it's been a big day, obviously baseball wise, with some of these trades. The Yankees let a few different guys go, sending away Joey Gallo. Um, Got a nice reliever and a starter as well in a couple different deals. But big news of the day is obviously Juan Soto going to the
Yeah,
Padres.
that's
Huge,
big.
huge deal. And I think the crazy thing is just seeing that the Nats had a championship team 3 years ago, and I mean that team is pretty much dismantled down to the studs. Bryce Harper's gone, Anthony Rendon's gone, Soto's gone now, and Scherzer was there as well. So see all those impactful guys heading out so quick. I think baseball has shown the worst historically when it comes to that. Some of these, whether it's the 2015 Royals or some of these teams that the '03 Florida Marlins. Some of these teams that had some talent, but just was so short-lived, and they really couldn't um, make too much of a run after that because being in smaller markets, they weren't able to pay their guys and have them stay around for the long haul. So again, an unfortunate thing for the Nats, but San Diego may, unfortunately, with Fernando Tatis dealing with injury, we haven't really been able to see him this year. But it's crazy to think that him, Manny Machado, and Juan Soto are all now going to be teammates. So once he's healthy, should be fireworks.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely, man. Just congratulations to Juan Soto. I mean, baseball. I mean, we talked about the debate with Kyler Murray about whether he made the right decision to play baseball in the NFL. And obviously, he made over 200. He's going to make over 230 million. Man, but baseball, once you're on top of once you're on top of the top, I mean, boy, you can be making a a crap ton. And Juan Soto is one of those guys that is up there. I mean, he's one of the elite baseball players in the world, and man, it's absolutely exciting. Matter of fact, I'm actually kind of mad because last year, for those who don't know, the Blue Jays actually played in Salem Field, which is in Buffalo, and
Hmm.
I think the Padres actually did come here, and I missed that. And even though he wasn't, I don't, Juan Soto wasn't really there. I mean, for you look at Fernando and just a lot of those guys, man. I mean, just so many baseball players came to Buffalo that I did not have the opportunity. I mean, I missed out on Aaron Judge. A lot of people went to that Yankees game. I couldn't even find a ticket, so. Yeah,
Yeah.
just a lot of missed opportunities. I mean, I did go to the Rays game and I did go to the Red Sox game, but I mean, just man, that's just that kind of just that definitely brings back some memories. But yeah, but congratulations, man, to Juan Soto, man, and just a lot of other baseball players that are going to get another incredible opportunity. Again, I mean, like I said, I mean, we're halfway through. We're halfway through. The Blue Jays, speaking of Buffalo, the Blue Jays for the most part are kind of doing their thing. They traded a couple of players, but hopefully the Blue Jays, man, they got to address that pitching. They have to address the pitching because they have everything else. I mean, once again, I think the Blue Jays have the most all stars on any team, but they just they're always in fighting for a wild card position. So hopefully they can kind of fix up their pitching there, but. As far as some other things, that quickly I can just talk about. I mean, Nick Saban in Alabama, number one right now in recruiting. People said, hey, Nick Saban can adapt to NIL, and now look, now he's number one recruiting. So that's just kind of just a get back to a lot of the people, maybe to Jimbo Fisher, because even though Jimbo Fisher criticized Nick Saban, he is 58th right now in recruiting, while Alabama is number one again. So that's interesting.
Yeah, it definitely is interesting, and that storyline. Ah, man, October. It's gonna be October 7th, I believe. When they take
The eighth.
October 8th. October
Mm-hmm.
8th. I was gonna say I knew it was an October matchup, but man, the narrative is just gonna keep ballooning until then. So, and especially if Bama is obviously holding up its end of the bargain, but if A&M is the team that we expect it to be and one that can compete on the field, with Bama, the buildup is just going to continue to grow as that game approaches. So, it'll be fun. And you know, again, this is my favorite time of year when it comes to NFL football being back, college football being back. You know, guys getting back for NBA training camps and baseball playoffs and things like that winding coming up too. So the turn from the end of July to the start of August, it's really like that ramp up month because everything is like just about to begin, like summer league stuff just wind down for the NBA and stuff like that. So but it's fun. It's gonna be a fun time. Bills camp out here as well is going on. So it'll be interesting to see how things play out over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, man, and I we got I am in the chat. I mean, like I said, he'll be the first one to tell you as a college football fan. I mean, July and August are one of the really one of the early August. It's one of the crappiest parts about college because there is no train, like there's training camp, but there's no preseason. You really can't go to the training camps to watch them practice like you can with NFL teams. So it sucks because like you've been doing nothing but speculating and hoping and just kind of making your predictions and it's a lot of trash talk as you guys can see right there with I am. But there, I mean, you got to wait. Like you have to wait until game day in order for everything to work out. But thank God for preseason. Thank God for NFL preseason because we got preseason coming up really, really shortly, and we can watch some of our teams, some of the players that maybe graduated for these universities. That we could see them as rookies and see how they do. I mean, and there's a lot more talks. I mean, the Dolphins, Tua Tagovailoa has been dominating training camp, and I'm excited for not just because I'm a Bills fan, but just because I'm from a Bama fan perspective. That's exciting to see one of the guys trying to show out, and it would be great from a Bills fan perspective to see that Dolphins Bills rivalry amp up because I would say probably besides the Patriots, I think we're the most hated out of all the teams in the division. So. Definitely the Bills have a huge target on their back, and so that would be just exciting to see a rivalry back there again. But I know he wants to talk a little about Georgia real quick, so I'll give you a little tidbit about it because I'm gonna do a live stream of my own, and we'll talk more about that. But Bama will destroy Georgia. I'm just gonna let you know that right now. Bama will destroy Georgia. No, it'll be a good game though. That's a great team. They lost a lot of talent, but that's one of those teams that can rotate like absolute crazy. I mean, Georgia will be fine offensively. These guys are running tons of 12 and 13 personnel. They have a 3 tight end system that can literally dominate the offensive landscape when it comes to college football. And I think that's going to be a good. Yeah, I mean it's going to be incredible. So I think that SEC championship game, I think it's highly plausible that both teams could go in there undefeated for the SEC title game.
Yeah, I'm really one big thing is I just want to see how Stetson Bennett, how he can handle taking on even more responsibility. So many young guys he'll have around him. He had a very very talented group around him, all the way the whole roster, all the way around. But he just showed to be a conductor, so hopefully he can do it again to put Georgia back in the title game.
Absolutely, man, absolutely. But yeah, that's gonna do it for us. Cause man, like I said, that was the first time that we just ran through the topics, and then we had all this. That was actually fun. But yeah, like I said, that was fun. That was definitely quick. That was definitely fast. But yeah, man, thank everyone for coming through the live stream. If you guys definitely like the live stream, definitely make sure to hit the like button, share the video, and subscribe. Especially to Buffalo Fambase, where there's a ton of content creators. We actually just started a new project, by the way, that I think me and Kyrie were involved. It's called the Mafia Minute, where it's pretty much kind of a short where we kind of just recap everything that was going on throughout the day. So yeah, that's kind of been interesting. That's been fun, and we can't wait for more people to definitely see what we've been doing for the project. But yeah, guys, I think that's just going to do it for us, man. This is Jared Call with Kari Demos, and again, if you guys. We will be back every Tuesday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard, 6 o'clock if you're on the Central, 4 o'clock if you're on the West, every Tuesday. And we're going to bring the latest sports topics, latest sports trends from college to the pros. Everything we'll talk about will be here on Buffalo Fambase. But anyway, guys, yeah, once again, Jared Call with Kari Demos. We'll catch you next time.
You are now tuned in to the newest Bills Mafia production, Fambase Sports. Join Jarek Hall and Kari Demos as they take you around the world of sports. Every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. Only on the official network of the original Bills Mafia.